Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is Stephen Nehrenz with This Week in Weather.
Howdy everyone, welcome to another edition of This Week in Weather on this September 10th. I'm Meteorologist Stephen Nehrenz. As always, really appreciate you clicking on our video here on our News on 6 YouTube channel. By the way, I'll talk about this again at the end. In the next few weeks, we're going to be starting to also publish these editions of This Week in Weather on our new News on 6 weather YouTube channel. Over the next few weeks, I'll kind of get you a little bit more acclimated with that. And again, I'll kind of remind you about that at the end here. But again, these will still be on the News on 6 YouTube channel for the time being, but we're going to start populating these to a separate News on 6 weather YouTube channel. So when that gets kind of finally settled in and finalized, I'll make sure to be directing y'all that way. Again, always appreciate you tuning in with me. You know the deal. If you've got questions, comments, suggestions about what you'd like to see or hear on This Week in Weather, there's my email address, my Facebook page on the screen there, and of course, as always, comments on these videos on our YouTube channel. And I have had some comments and suggestions of folks that you would like to hear from, topics you'd like to hear discussed. I mentioned this the last couple times, but I am working on some additional interview guests down the line. It's going to take a few more weeks to introduce some of those additional interview guests, just with the long and short of it is the next couple of weeks are a pretty busy schedule around here at News on 6 for a variety of reasons. So I won't be able to fit in guests for another couple of weeks, but I've got a few that I've got lined up that we get towards the end of September and then keep rolling from there. That will be kind of filtering in. I think you'll enjoy also talking about, some fall statistics, things like that. Of course, we're getting close to the official fall. That leads us into what we're going to discuss right off the bat here is that the last, 2.5, almost 3 weeks, it's felt more like fall than summer. It's coming to an end. Fake fall, false fall, whatever you want to call it. For those of us that are fall weather fans, which includes me, it has been fantastic. These are high temperatures over the last almost 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, going back from the tail end of August through this first about week and a half of September. And there's a lot of numbers on the screen. That's why I went full screen so you could take time to maybe read those a little bit. We have had, going back from August 23rd right on up to today, September 10th, the day that we're recording this, we've had 18 straight days of below normal temperatures. Now these are the high temperatures on the map here, but when you factor in the low temperatures, kind of average that out, it's below normal as well. 18 consecutive days of at or below normal temperatures, or I should say below normal temperatures. Fantastic. I mean, that is an extended early tease of fall that we usually don't get this time of year. We usually just get it in like little small doses, like a cool day here, cool day there this time of year. But this last 2.5 week stretch has been a real treat. I mean, look at all the days we've had in the 70s and 80s. The last time we hit at least 90 was August 23rd. And we're, spoiler alert, going to start getting back into the 90s for the tail end of the week here, which, by the way, is still totally normal for this time of year. I mean, that starts, trending into slightly above average, above normal high temperatures, which we'll discuss in a minute. But again, this has been, for fall weather fans like myself, a fantastic stretch of temperatures. Fall will come back eventually, all right? But I think once we get into, the late summer feeling late this week, probably going to stick around with us for a little while. And there's a big reason why, because that jet stream pattern is changing. I kind of like to show you this as just a good way to summarize and break down why we've been in this consistently cooler than normal pattern over the last, again, 2.5 to almost 3 weeks, as we have had pretty persistent northwest flow. I mentioned that a lot in case you're like, well, what does that mean? I know you say that all the time. What does that mean? That's strong mid to upper level wind flow from northwest to southeast. And when we often have that, if it sets up kind of right over the plains like it has been recently, that is a flow pattern that has a good tendency to bring cold fronts our way, filter in much cooler air, keep the summer heat at bay. And of course, there's been back and forth on that the last 2.5, 3 weeks or so. But that's the general pattern that we've been in, that we've gotten a cold front. Every time we're about to warm back up, we've gotten another cold front. It's just kind of kept the fall feeling around. That's where we've been. Now, this is where we are headed, or this is really where we are today, and this is the pattern that's going to start taking hold. The big picture now, that late summer ridge, upper level ridge, call it the heat dome sometimes as well, is starting to strengthen. You notice it's sliding further to the east, getting closer and closer to us. It's strengthening and starting to push that stronger jet stream flow away from us. You see how those wind arrows, that northwest flow is weakening. It's still around, but it's becoming less of an influence for our weather. And this is much more of the pattern that we typically have at the tail end of summer, when we're, usually this time of year when we haven't had the kind of fall teas we've just had. We're in this pattern and we're usually going, okay, come on, can we finally get a fall cold front? At least we got a few weeks of early fall to enjoy before we settled back into this late summer pattern. And again, this is probably going to stick with us for a little while. In addition, this is the same outlook I just showed you, the water vapor satellite. I like to show this because it's a good way of, you see kind of the motion in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. This water vapor satellite imagery it helps kind of pinpoint where those bigger storm systems in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere are. And it's kind of, I think fairly easy to pick out where you can see a system off the west coast of the United States. And also, I'm going to go full screen again just so maybe you can see it a little bit better. See that little burst of cloud cover over the southern central plains. The last day or two, as the upper level ridge has started to strengthen, we've had these smaller, weaker but organized storm systems that have kind of have been riding along the edge of that upper level ridge, and that's been providing some bursts of storms across the high plains, kind of the eastern, just coming off the eastern portion of the Rockies, eastern Colorado, western, southwestern Kansas, northwestern Oklahoma, and then kind of the remnants that has been riding its way into our area. So the last few days we've had kind of lingering isolated showers and storms. Now at the beginning of the week, that brought some severe weather, actually a couple days of bursts of severe storms, again across southwest Kansas into northwestern Oklahoma, including, and also the Texas Panhandle, including a couple tornadoes just a couple days ago. First tornadoes that we've had in a few months. And we had one in far northwestern Oklahoma. There was also one in the Texas Panhandle. It's just one of those, worthy reminders that severe weather can happen any time of year in Oklahoma, no matter the season. It just takes the right atmospheric setup. Now, of course, as you're well aware, if you've lived in Oklahoma for any amount of time, there are certain times of the year, certain seasons where it's much more likely. Spring and oftentimes our fall, kind of when we get into further into the actual fall season, we can have sometimes a kind of miniature second severe weather season. We're not quite into that setup yet, but the setup just a day or two ago with those storm systems riding around the edge of that ridge provided the severe weather opportunities and those couple tornado reports that they had in northwestern Oklahoma and also into the northern Texas Panhandle. That has added to our tornado count for the year in Oklahoma. That was the 102nd tornado reported officially in Oklahoma for 2025. And these numbers will continue to be refined as we go along here. That's the 8th most. You can see the list on the screen there. 8th most tornadoes on record for Oklahoma specifically. And these tornado stats, kind of these reliable tornado stats, go back to about 1950. So we're talking several decades worth of records. But obviously, we still got a few more months to go to potentially add to these totals. Hopefully, we don't end up making a run at the top of that ranking list. Of course, just last year, 2024, we broke the record that we had previously set in 2019 for record number of tornadoes in a year in Oklahoma. So let's hope we don't make a run at that. But we're now at the 8th most for a calendar year in Oklahoma as far as the number of tornadoes that have been reported across the state. And again, that's just Oklahoma. Of course, Kansas, southeast Kansas, northwest Arkansas, you've had your fair share of tornadoes through the year as well. All right, back to, kind of jumping around here, but back to the big picture that I was just showing you a couple minutes ago. The false fall, like I said, or fake fall, whatever you want to call it, everyone's got their names for it, fades away. The heat dome starts to take over again, that upper level ridge, that late summer upper level ridge, where it pushes the stronger jet stream flow away from us. You'll see those storm systems that kind of ride up around the edge of the ridge through the Rockies, up into the northern plains, the northwest United States, the far northeast United States. But this is generally a pattern that promotes hotter weather, mostly dry weather, and just kind of, the summer doldrums, for lack of a better word. Now, I'll point out right off the bat, we're not forecasting record-breaking heat or anything like that, all right? It's just going to be back into the summer heat that's been missing for about the last 2.5, 3 weeks. And, fall weather fans, you're going to have to be a little patient on this because there will be some fluctuations here and there. But as you watch on Future View, kind of the big picture as we head further down the line into next week and even beyond, the upper level ridge doesn't really want to go anywhere anytime soon. It doesn't want to move out all that quickly. It may take us until, later in the month as we get closer to the tail end of September for us to maybe start getting back into somewhat of the fall pattern that we have been in here recently. So summer temperature is about to take over. They will probably stick with us for a while. And by a while, I mean at least for the next week or two. That's just typically what happens this time of year. All the more reason that we were really spoiled by the fall weather that we had for the last 2.5, 3 weeks. Like to look ahead to the football forecast now that we're right into football season, my favorite season. And those forecasts, the high school games Friday night, those a few games Thursday night, the brunt of the games on Friday night. Yeah, not feeling like those games did last Friday when it was in the 60s and even upper 50s. Yeah, this time around it feels more like summertime. For Friday evening football games, kickoff temperatures near 90. A little on the toasty side of things with the south breeze, and then temperatures will drop off into the 80s. Not worried about any rain or storms for those high school games Friday evening, so obviously good news there, but much more like summertime. And then for college football, of course, OSU's off this weekend. TU back here at home, taking on Navy Saturday evening at Chapman Stadium. Yeah, summertime. Not like the first games of the season were for OU, OSU, and TU. Saturday afternoon, kickoffs at 7, so tailgating, 4 to 5 p.m. Saturday outside of Chapman Stadium. Little toasty. Temperatures will be in the 90s. We'll have a steady south breeze to work with, thankfully. Kickoff temperatures still upper 80s to near 90, and then slowly settling into the 80s during that game for TU Saturday evening. Again, not worried about any rain or storms the way it's been trending so far. So obviously good news there, but it's not going to be the fall weather, jacket weather for TU's game against Navy. And then OU, of course, playing earlier in the day Saturday up in Philadelphia against Temple. It does look like pretty darn good weather in Philly for OU versus Temple. Tailgating temperatures will be very pleasant. That's, of course, a 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff for us here in Oklahoma. Looks like really pleasant, mild weather for tailgating, and then warming up to about 80, the low 80s during the second half of OU's game there in Philly on Saturday. For folks that might be traveling up there, that weather looks very, very good. But again, here's the trend upward for the first time in a while. The high temperature map here that I've got on the screen, the last, about, like I've said, about 2.5, 3 weeks running, it's been all those blue bars pointed down, right? Those are the below normal temperatures that we've had. Well, we've gone the other way now. The next several days, temperatures at or above normal. Again, normal high for this time of year is upper 80s. We'll be pushing back into the low to mid 90s, which, again, not record-breaking, nothing that's just extreme, but we've had such a long stretch of this little fall tease here that at least the first day or two of this summertime, late summertime heat might be a little bit of a shock to the system. It's like, oh, man, we're back into this again. And I kind of showed you this with the jet stream pattern already, but just fair warning. The long-range outlook, you see on the screen, I'll go full screen again so you can maybe read that counter a little better. This would take us past next week through the middle portion of September. The warmer than normal temperature trend for a lot of the country likely to stick around as long as that upper level ridge, that kind of late summertime ridge heat dome is dominating the weather pattern across much of the country. The late summer warmth or heat's probably not going to go anywhere. So it's going to take a while for us to get back into the fall feeling that we've had for the last about 2.5, almost 3 weeks, hoping that we can have some additional rain mixing in with there. And I know I say that and you kind of can thinking, well, as you're well aware, it's been an extremely wet year, across green country and across Oklahoma. So you're thinking, wow, do we really need any more rain? I mean, no, we don't need another 5-6 inches of rain, but as we went through the end of July and through August, before we got some rain at the tail end of August, we were really drying out pretty quickly across green country. And as this late summer pattern settles back in, we're going to start drying out again. So it would not be the worst thing in the world if at the very least we can get some rain to mix in with this late summer stretch that we're about to get back into. We'll see how that times out. We're not seeing any strong signals of big rainmakers once we get back into this summer pattern. But it would not be the worst thing in the world if we could get a little bit more of that mixing in. And I mentioned, we go back into the 90s over the next several days. You can see the stat on the screen here. 90s in September is more than typical. That's not crazy at all. Even though those normal highs for this time of year start to trend down, obviously, you know how it goes around here. More often than not, September still stays relatively hot around here, which is, again, as I continue to say, what has made the last several couple week stretch feel even better. But we typically have still plenty of summer kind of hanging on in September, which means 90+ degree days. Our average last 90-degree day in Tulsa specifically, September 30th, so all the way at the end of the month. The last decade or so, we've had quite a few Octobers that have had a 90-degree day or two as well. Hopefully we won't do that this year. That's a long ways off. We'll worry about that when we get there. But just, again, for us fall weather fans that have loved this last few weeks, summer's hanging back around, or it's moving back in, and if it ends up being pretty stubborn the next few weeks and we have plenty of 90-degree days, don't be totally surprised about that. We'll get back into fall time eventually. It just might take us a little while to get back into that feeling that has been a welcome change of pace. So that's kind of where we're trending here over the next several days. As always, like I said, I appreciate you joining me for This Week in Weather streaming. You can find these streaming and archived on our News on 6 YouTube channel. And I mentioned this off the top here, that over the next few weeks, you're going to start seeing these posted on our brand new News on 6 Weather specific YouTube channel. So as that starts happening, when that starts happening, I'll start kind of directing you to the News on 6 weather specific YouTube channel when we start getting those posted there over the next few weeks. And again, as I also mentioned off the top here, these last few has just been a lot of me talking, right? And hopefully it's interesting, but you might want to see some other guests mixed in as well. And within the next few weeks, I'll have some more guests to mix in, just getting through kind of a very busy September period here where I don't have as much time to mix in, special guests to join me for This Week in Weather. But I've got some lined up as we get further towards the end of the month and beyond. So again, like I said, as always, thank you for joining me for This Week in Weather. We'll see you here next week. Folks, take care of each other. And again, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching this Oklahoma's own digital studio live stream from the Bob Mills Weather Center. Stay with News on 6 online and on television anytime for the latest weather updates to keep you safe and informed.